What happens when Hollywood royalty meets royal controversy on daytime television? In just 14 seconds, one comment would turn a routine interview into the most explosive moment in The View's history, leaving one guest storming off the set in a fit of rage that shocked audiences worldwide. Last night's episode of The View was supposed to be a celebration. Angelina Jolie had arrived at the studio looking radiant, her humanitarian work taking center stage as she discussed her latest project with refugees in Southeast Asia. The audience was captivated by her grace and compassion as she spoke about children she had met, who reminded her why she continues this vital work around the globe. But then, everything changed when the second guest joined the panel. Meghan Markle entered the studio with an air of confidence that immediately shifted the energy in the room. Dressed in an expensive cream-colored blazer, she settled into the guest chair next to Angelina, with what viewers would later describe as a forced smile. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the professional host, welcomed Meghan warmly. "We're so excited to have you here today, Meghan. You've been making headlines with your new projects and advocacy work." "Thank you for having me, Whoopi," Meghan replied, her voice carrying that familiar, measured tone. "It's wonderful to be here, especially sitting next to someone like Angelina, who clearly understands the importance of using your platform for good." The comment seemed innocent enough, but there was something in Meghan's delivery that made Angelina glance over with raised eyebrows. The subtle emphasis on the word clearly hadn't gone unnoticed by anyone on the panel. Joy Behar jumped in with enthusiasm. "Both of you have done incredible work in humanitarian efforts. Angelina, your work with the UN has been groundbreaking, and Meghan, your focus on women's empowerment has been inspiring." "Well," Meghan began, straightening in her chair, "I think it's important to recognize that some of us have had to fight harder for our voices to be heard. When you come from certain backgrounds, you don't get the same automatic respect or platforms handed to you." The studio fell silent for a moment. Angelina's expression remained calm, but viewers could see her processing what had just been said. Sarah Haynes tried to steer the conversation back on track. "Both of you have certainly made significant impacts in your own unique ways." But Meghan wasn't finished. "I just think it's interesting how some people get praised for their humanitarian work when they've had every advantage from birth, while others who have actually lived through struggles and represent underrepresented communities have to work twice as hard for half the recognition." Angelina finally spoke, her voice steady and diplomatic. "I think everyone's journey is different, and we all bring our own experiences to the work we do. What matters most is that we're all trying to help people who need it. That's easy to say when you've never had to deal with real adversity." Meghan shot back, her composure beginning to crack. "Some of us have had to overcome actual barriers, not just play characters who face them." The audience began to murmur, sensing the tension building between the two women. Whoopi attempted to intervene. "Ladies, I think we can all agree that both of your contributions are valuable." But Meghan was on a roll now, her voice getting sharper. "I'm sorry, but I have to speak my truth here. I've been watching this conversation, and I'm tired of sitting quietly while certain narratives get perpetuated. When you look at who gets celebrated in Hollywood and who gets torn down, there's a clear pattern." Angelina remained remarkably composed, but her jaw tightened slightly. "I'm not sure what pattern you're referring to. The pattern where some people get to be seen as saints, while others get demonized by the media for doing the exact same things?" Meghan replied, her voice rising. "The pattern where privilege gets mistaken for virtue." Ana Navarro leaned forward, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "I think we should focus on the positive impact you're both making, rather than comparisons." "I agree," Angelina said softly. "There's room for everyone to make a difference." "Is there, though?" Meghan challenged. "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like there's only room for certain types of people to be the heroes of these stories. And coincidentally, they all look the same and come from the same backgrounds." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Angelina's eyes flashed with something that looked like controlled anger, but her voice remained level. "I think that's unfair. I've worked for 20 years with refugees and vulnerable populations. I've given my time, my money, and my voice to causes I believe in. I didn't choose where I was born or what advantages I had, but I've tried to use them responsibly." "Tried to use them responsibly?" Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean you've tried to use them to build a perfect public image, while the rest of us get scrutinized for every single move we make?" Sunny Hostin jumped in, clearly trying to defuse the situation. "Both of you have faced media scrutiny in different ways. Have we, though?" Meghan turned to face Sunny directly. "Because I don't remember Angelina ever being called aggressive or difficult for speaking up about issues she cares about. I don't remember her being accused of being manipulative for wanting privacy for her family." Angelina's patience was clearly being tested, but she maintained her composure. I've faced plenty of criticism over the years. The media hasn't always been kind to me either. Oh, please, Meghan scoffed. You've been America's sweetheart for decades. Even when you went through your divorce, you were portrayed as the victim. Meanwhile, some of us get blamed for breaking up families just for existing. The comparison to her own situation with the royal family was obvious, and the studio audience was now completely silent, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Whoopi made another attempt to regain control. I think we need to take a step back here. But Angelina had apparently heard enough. She turned to face Meghan directly, her voice still calm but with an edge that hadn't been there before. You know what, Meghan? You're right about one thing. I have had advantages in my life. I was born into a family with connections in Hollywood. I had opportunities that many people don't get. But I've also lost my mother to cancer. I've gone through public divorces. I've had my parenting questioned. And I've been called everything from a homewrecker to a bad mother by the media. Meghan opened her mouth to respond. But Angelina wasn't finished. The difference is, I've never used those experiences as an excuse to tear down other women who are trying to do good in the world. I've never sat on a talk show and suggested that someone else's charitable work is less valid because of their background. The words hit like a slap. Meghan's face flushed red, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she seemed at a loss for words. I'm not tearing anyone down, she finally managed. I'm just pointing out the obvious disparities in how different people get treated. By suggesting that my 20 years of humanitarian work is somehow fake or less meaningful because I'm white and was born with certain advantages, Angelina's voice was still controlled, but there was fire in her eyes now. By implying that I haven't faced real struggles or adversity? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. Angelina's response was swift and decisive. You said I've never dealt with real adversity. You said I play characters who face barriers rather than facing them myself. You suggested that my work gets praised only because of my privilege, not because of its merit. The panel members were all looking uncomfortable now, unsure of how to navigate this increasingly hostile exchange between their guests. Joy Behar attempted to lighten the mood with nervous laughter. Well, this got intense quickly. Maybe we should talk about your upcoming projects instead? But Meghan wasn't ready to back down. If anything, Angelina's response had only fueled her anger further. You want to talk about merit? Let's talk about merit. How many refugee camps did you visit before you had cameras following you? How much of your humanitarian work happens when there aren't photographers around? The accusation was so blatantly unfair that even the studio audience began to shift uncomfortably. Angelina's face went pale, and for the first time, her composure truly cracked. That is completely out of line, Angelina said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. I've spent years of my life in places that most people wouldn't go, doing work that doesn't always make headlines. I've held dying children in my arms. I've sat with mothers who've lost everything. Don't you dare question my commitment to that work. Sunny Hostin looked horrified. Meghan, I think that was inappropriate. Was it though? Meghan's voice had taken on a mocking tone. Or are we just not allowed to ask tough questions when it comes to certain people? Because I'm genuinely curious about how much of this humanitarian work is actually about helping people versus building a brand. The studio erupted in shocked murmurs. Several audience members could be heard gasping audibly. Whoopi's face showed a mixture of disbelief and anger. Hold on just a minute, Whoopi said firmly. That's crossing a line and we don't do that here. But Meghan seemed to have lost all sense of boundaries. I'm sorry if the truth makes people uncomfortable, but someone needs to say it. We sit here and praise people for doing the bare minimum with their privilege, while others who actually sacrifice and struggle get ignored or criticized. Angelina stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Oh, so now you're going to run away when someone challenges you? Meghan called out, also rising from her seat. How very privileged of you. The audience was now completely silent, watching in stunned disbelief as one of Hollywood's most respected figures was being publicly attacked by someone who was supposed to be a fellow advocate. Angelina turned back to face Meghan, her eyes blazing. You want to know what privilege looks like, Meghan? Privilege is sitting on a talk show and attacking someone's life's work because you're jealous of the recognition they receive. Privilege is using your platform to tear down other women instead of building them up. Jealous? Meghan's voice reached a new pitch. You think I'm jealous of you? I think you're bitter, Angelina replied with devastating calm. I think you're angry that the world didn't embrace you the way you expected. And instead of looking inward, you're lashing out at people who had nothing to do with your struggles. The words hit their target perfectly. Meghan's face went from red to white in an instant, and her hands began to shake with rage. "How dare you," she whispered, then louder. "How dare you psychoanalyze me? You don't know anything about what I've been through." "You're right, I don't," Angelina said, her voice returning to its earlier gentleness. "Just like you don't know anything about what I've been through. The difference is, I'm not using my pain as an excuse to attack you." Ana Navarro tried desperately to intervene. "Maybe we should all take a breath here." But Meghan was beyond reason now. "You think you're so perfect, don't you, Saint Angelina, saving the world one photo opportunity at a time? Well, let me tell you something about your perfect image." "Stop," Whoopi commanded, her voice cutting through the studio like a knife. "This ends now." "No, it doesn't end now," Meghan snapped, turning her fury on the host. "I'm tired of being silenced. I'm tired of being told to sit down and be grateful while people like her get worshipped for doing things that plenty of other people do without getting Nobel Peace Prize nominations." Angelina had heard enough. She walked over to where her purse was sitting and picked it up calmly. "I'm leaving," she announced to the panel. "I came here to talk about refugees who need help, not to be part of whatever this island." "Of course you're leaving," Meghan shouted after her. "Run back to your ivory tower where everyone tells you how wonderful you are." Angelina stopped at the edge of the set and turned back one final time. "You know what's truly sad, Meghan? We could have been allies. We both care about making the world better. We both understand what it's like to be scrutinized by the media. Instead, you chose to make this about competition and resentment." "Don't you dare lecture me about what's sad," Meghan screamed, completely abandoning any pretense of composure. "You've never had to fight for anything real in your entire privileged life, and you've never learned that tearing others down doesn't lift you up," Angelina replied quietly before walking off the set with dignity intact. The silence that followed was deafening. Meghan stood alone in the middle of the set, breathing heavily. While the panel members stared at her in shock, the audience remained completely quiet, as if afraid to make any sound that might set her off again. Sarah Haynes was the first to speak. "Meghan, maybe we should take a commercial break." "Maybe you should all stop treating me like I'm the problem here," Meghan snapped. "I'm the only one who had the courage to say what everyone was thinking." "No one was thinking that," Joy said firmly. "No one was thinking any of that." "Of course you'd say that," Meghan replied bitterly. "You all stick together, don't you? The establishment protects its own." Whoopi had clearly reached her limit. "Okay, that's enough. We're going to commercial, and when we come back, we'll be discussing other topics." "You're dismissing me?" Meghan's voice cracked with disbelief. "You're actually dismissing me right now?" "I'm ending this segment before it gets any worse," Whoopi replied with steel in her voice. Meghan looked around the panel, seeing no support anywhere. The audience continued to stare at her with expressions ranging from shock to disappointment to outright disapproval. "Fine," she said, grabbing her own purse with shaking hands. "I can see I'm not welcome here anyway. God forbid someone tells the truth about your precious golden girl." "Meghan, please," Sonny tried one last time. "Let's just calm down and talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," Meghan shot back. "You've all made it clear whose side you're on. The privileged white woman who plays humanitarian for the cameras gets protected, while the woman of color, who actually speaks truth, gets silenced." The accusation hung in the air like poison. The panel members looked at each other with expressions of hurt and confusion. "That's not fair, and you know it," Anna said quietly. "What I know is that I came here expecting to have an honest conversation, and instead I got ambushed and ganged up on for having the audacity to question your saint." Meghan replied, her voice breaking slightly. She turned toward the audience, addressing them directly. "You all saw what happened here today. Remember this moment when you're wondering why certain voices get silenced while others get amplified." With that, she stormed toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly against the studio floor. But she wasn't quite finished. At the last moment, she turned back to the panel. "And for the record," she called out, her voice echoing through the stunned studio, "some of us didn't need to adopt children from other countries to prove we care about the world. Some of us were born caring about justice." The final insult landed like a physical blow. The panel sat in complete silence as Meghan finally exited, leaving behind a wake of destruction and stunned disbelief. Whoopi looked directly into the camera, her professionalism kicking in despite the chaos. "We'll be right back after this commercial break." As the camera stopped rolling, the studio remained eerily quiet. The audience sat motionless, still processing what they had just witnessed. The panel members looked at each other with expressions of shock and sadness. The most explosive moment in The View's history was over, but the shockwaves would be felt long after the cameras stopped rolling. In just 14 seconds of bitter accusations, one guest had managed to destroy her own reputation while inadvertently proving exactly why Angelina Jolie's grace under pressure had earned her the world's respect.